Welcome to Cyrene, an ancient Greek city on the coast of Libya, part 1 of 2. Cyrene, an ancient Greek city on the northern coast of modern-day Libya, was a significant Hellenic settlement in North Africa and is today one of the world's most impressive examples of ancient Greco-Roman cultural heritage. The Grecian-founded civilization remains a solid reminder of the successive, vibrant cultures that once flourished there for nearly 1,000 years. From the mid-7th century BC to the 4th century AD. Today, the ruins of Cyrene stand as a United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization, or UNESCO, World Heritage Site, offering a glimpse into its grand past through remnants of the ancient structures, including the Sanctuary of Apollo, Temple of Zeus, and Greek Theatre of Cyrene, which was converted into a Roman amphitheater in the 2nd century. These exceptional relics of ancient Greek architecture highlight their original grandeur and their influence on later structures. Several other notable features and constructions are the necropolis, agora or a central public open space, the tomb of Batos, and the impressive baths of Trajan. The site reflects the city's evolution under Greek, Roman, and Byzantine rule, making it a key location for understanding the cultural and historical dynamics of the ancient Mediterranean world. Archaeological evidence suggests that humans have lived in Cyrenaica since the Paleolithic period, with the region's caves such as the Hawa Fatia cave likely providing shelter. In the Neolithic period, groups in Cyrenaica practiced early forms of agriculture as evidenced by stone tools and pottery fragments found in various sites. The foundation of Cyrene is deeply rooted in the rich traditions of ancient Greece. The city's name derives from the remarkable mythological figure of Cyrene, a Thessalian princess who once guarded her father's ship citizens on Mount Pelion in mainland Greece. As she matured, her extraordinary beauty and unmatched physical agility set her apart. When she bravely defended her flocks, her display of courage caught the attention of the god Apollo, the Greek god of oracles, music, and light. According to legend, Apollo carried Cyrene across the Mediterranean Sea to the Libyan coast. There, at a place known as the Hill of Metals or Meetosa, she bore their son, the demigod Aristeus. Ancient Greek lyric poet Pindar's poem Pythian 4 also plays a key role in Cyrene's mythology. In this ode, Pindar intertwines the tale of the Argonauts with the founding of Cyrene. During their return voyage from Colchis, the Argonauts, a band of heroes, were led by warrior Jason. The Argonauts were thrown drastically off course, and their ship, the Argo, ran aground. They thus found themselves stranded in the Libyan desert. Struggling through the harsh terrain, they endured 12 grueling days carrying their sacred vessel on their shoulders in a desperate search for a way back to the sea. At Lake Tritonis, they encountered the god Triton, who, disguised as a mortal, offered them guidance. As a token of friendship, the god Triton presented Euphemus, an Argonaut and son of Poseidon, with a clod of earth. This gift symbolized a prophecy that Euphemus's descendants would one day establish a great city in Libya. However, the clod was accidentally washed overboard and eventually settled on the island of Thera, or modern-day Santorini, in the Aegean Sea. According to the prophecy, Thera would serve as the ancestral homeland of the Greeks, who would later establish Cyrene. In Pythian 4, Medea, the sorceress wife of Jason and granddaughter of the sun god Helios, foretold the city's founding.
From this wave-washed land, one day the daughter of Epaphus will have planted in her a root of cities that are dear to man in the temple of Zeus Ammon.
This prophecy referred to Batu, a descendant of Euphemus, who would ultimately lead the establishment of Cyrene. Another line in Pindar's Ode confirms this.
Batus should come to settle the fertile lands of Libya, leaving his sacred island, i.e. Thera, to found a city of chariots at the shining breast of the sea.
Welcome back to Cyrene, an ancient Greek city on the coast of Libya, part 1 of 2. In the 5th century BC, Greek historian and geographer Herodotus, known as the father of history, wrote about how Batu founded Cyrene. Around 639 BC, King Cyrene of Thera, whose people were of Spartan descent, traveled to seek the guidance of the oracle of Delphi, the high priestess at the temple of Apollo. Batu was among the king's convoy. The king became baffled by the oracle of Delphi, who directed him to settle on the Libyan coast. However, neither King Cyrene nor the rest of the Therians knew where Libya was. Thera then suffered a devastating 7-year drought, and its growing population was struggling to survive. They again sought the advice of the oracle, who reminded them of her previous instructions. Unable to undertake the journey himself due to his age, King Cyrene eventually dispatched Batu to fulfill this mission. Eventually, the Therians, led by Batu, settled along a barren stretch of coastline and lived peacefully among the local people for 6 years. Guided by some yellow-haired locals, they traveled through fertile lands nestled between two hills, eventually arriving at a sacred spring known as Apollo's Fountain. The yellow-haired people were likely Berbers, the earliest known inhabitants of the Cyrenaica region. There, the Libyan guides proclaimed, "This is the place for you to settle, for here there is a hole in the sky." This phrase likely alluded to the area's unusually abundant rainfall, a rare phenomenon in North Africa. Batu led his people to Cyrene, where the abundant water supply and the natural defense of the elevated terrain provided both security and stability. In 631 BC, they fulfilled the prophecy tied to the Argonauts legend. This prophecy culminated in Batu, who, centuries later, led Greek settlers from Thera to establish Cyrene, one of the greatest cities of the ancient Greek world. Later, King Batu II encouraged further settlement, drawing immigrants primarily from Peloponnese, Crete, and other parts of Greece. As a result, Cyrene quickly grew. The archaeological site of Cyrene is located north of the village of Shahat and east of Beda, perched on a ridge of the Jebel Akhtar upland, approximately 600 meters above sea level. From this point, a road known as the Street of Batu or Skyrota stretches southeast for about 1 kilometer. This route passes several key landmarks, including the Agora, the house of Jason Magnus, numerous palatial residences, the Stoa of Hermes and Heracles, the Caesareum theaters, and a caravanserai or a roadside inn before reaching the city's gates. This site has provided archaeological evidence confirming that Greek settlement in Cyrene began in the mid-7th century BC, with early pottery discovered from Thera, Sparta, Samos, and Rhodes. The Greek colonists from Thera are credited with constructing a shrine at the site. During the 7th or 6th century BC, they also built the first sanctuary of Apollo. The sanctuary of Apollo was slightly shorter than most temples of that era, having 11 columns instead of the standard 13. Constructed without a front porch and fashioned with mud bricks in the upper parts of the building instead of carved stone, it was constructed faithfully in the Doric architectural style that was prevalent in Greece. The Temple of Zeus at Cyrene was one of the largest and most impressive Greek temples of the ancient world. Built between 500 and 480 BC, the Doric octastyle peripteral temple stood as a monumental structure measuring 68.3 meters in length and 30.4 meters in width, roughly the same size as the Temple of Zeus at Olympia and the Parthenon in Athens. Positioned atop a three-stepped crepidoma, the temple faced east. The cella of the temple was an impressive 2 stories high, with its interior divided into 3 aisles by 2 rows of columns. Surrounding the cella was an external colonnade featuring 8 columns at the front and the rear, and 17 along each of the long sides. Each of these massive columns was made up of 9 large cylindrical sections known as drums, which were stacked one on top of the other to form the full height of the column. Each drum had a diameter of 1.9 meters, and the capitals capping at the top of the columns weighed around 17 tons. This grandeur of design and scale created an imposing peristyle. We are fortunate to have these reminders of the majesty and elegance of times past. Gracious viewers, we appreciate your company today. Join us again on Friday, May 23rd for Cyrene, an ancient Greek city on the coast of Libya, Part 2 of 2. In Libya, people may ask, Kif halak, that's how are you in Arabic. Cherished friends, I am Fatkhla. The welcoming people of Libya wish you joyful and wondrous days in Allah's beneficence. Welcome to Cyrene, an ancient Greek city on the coast of Libya, Part 2 of 2. Cyrene, an ancient Greek city on the northern coast of modern-day Libya, was a significant Hellenic settlement in North Africa and is today one of the world's most impressive examples of ancient Greco-Roman cultural heritage. The Grecian-founded civilization remains a solid reminder of the successive, vibrant cultures that once flourished there for nearly 1,000 years. From the mid-7th century BC to the 4th century AD. Today, the ruins of Cyrene stand as a United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization, or UNESCO, World Heritage Site, offering a glimpse into its grand past through remnants of the ancient structures, including the Sanctuary of Apollo, Temple of Zeus, and Greek Theatre of Cyrene, which was converted into a Roman amphitheater in the 2nd century. These exceptional relics of ancient Greek architecture highlight their original grandeur and their influence on later structures. Several other notable features and constructions are the necropolis, agora or a central public open space, the tomb of Batos, and the impressive baths of Trajan. The site reflects the city's evolution under Greek, Roman, and Byzantine rule, making it a key location for understanding the cultural and historical dynamics of the ancient Mediterranean world. Cyrene experienced multiple political upheavals, culminating in the end of the Batiad dynasty in 440 BC and the establishment of the Republic of Cyrene. However, long before the fall of the dynasty, the city had already submitted to the Achaemenid Persian Empire in 525 BC during Cambyses II's conquest of Egypt. Despite this period of Persian influence, Cyrene maintained a degree of autonomy until the eventual shift to a republican form of government. This period marked a turn in architectural influences within the city. Initially, Cyrene's architecture was heavily inspired by its founding metropolis, Thera. However, following the political changes, there was a deliberate move away from Theran styles towards those prevalent in mainland Greece, particularly Athens. This transition coincided with Cyrene's adoption of democratic principles, reflecting a broader cultural and political alignment with Athenian models. The Sanctuary of Apollo serves as a prime example of this evolution. Its original design mirrored Theran architecture, but post-monarchy reconstructions embraced Athenian aesthetics, symbolizing the city's new democratic identity. In the 4th century BC, the Sanctuary of Apollo was completely rebuilt. The original grand Doric columns were felled and used as fresh foundations. Unlike its predecessor, which featured lighter materials, the new temple, completely made of stone, required much bigger and stronger columns to support its weight. This version of the Sanctuary of Apollo stood for several centuries. After the Republic of Cyrene was established in 440 BC, the city maintained its independence while being influenced by broader Greek political dynamics. Despite these external pressures, Cyrene continued to prosper both culturally and economically. Cyrene became renowned in the ancient world as one of the only sources of the highly prized medicinal plant silphium. This wonder herb was used by ancient physicians, including Hippocrates, vegetarian, to treat coughs, sore throats, fevers, digestive issues, nausea, chills, and even corns on the feet. Hippocrates wrote,
"When the gut protrudes and will not remain in its place, scrape the finest and most compact silphium into small pieces and apply as a cataplasm."
Silphium was so valuable that the Syrian economy heavily depended on it, and the plant was even featured on their currency. Silphium is believed to have become extinct sometime in the 1st century, possibly due to over-harvesting and overgrazing, particularly from animal people raising and also climate change. In 332 BC, following His Majesty Alexander the Great's conquest of Egypt, Cyrene submitted to his rule. The following year, in 331 BC, Alexander famously visited the Oracle of Ammon at Siwa Oasis, where representatives from Cyrene traveled to present him with gifts as a gesture of reverence toward their new ruler. The city's connection with the Ammon temple at Siwa dated back to its founding in the 7th century BC. A striking life-size statue of Macedonian Emperor Alexander the Great is among the many significant historical artifacts currently on display at the Cyrene Archaeological Museum. Despite acknowledging King Alexander's authority, Cyrene remained politically independent of direct Macedonian rule. An inscription from the late 320s BC states that during a famine, the city demonstrated its economic strength and generosity by sending over 800,000 medimni of grain, or approximately 41.6 million liters, to Greek cities and the Macedonian royal family.
Vegan, you are the rose in the garden, the star in the dark night.
Harmonious friends, let's take time now to contemplate on God within our hearts. We'll be right back here on Supreme Master Television. Welcome back to Cyrene, an ancient Greek city on the coast of Libya, part 2 of 2. Not long after Alexander the Great passed away, in 323 BC, Macedonian General Soter became His Majesty King Ptolemy I of Egypt, which coincided with an era of cultural prosperity and the spur of insight in Cyrene. During this time, the city became home to several renowned scholars, including poet and scholar Callimachus, mathematician and polymath Eratosthenes, and Aristippus, who was a student of venerated Greek enlightened master Socrates, vegetarian. The Romans took control of Cyrene in 96 BC following a series of political upheavals and conflicts. The Romans then ruled Cyrene for several centuries, during which they constructed baths within the sanctuary of Apollo complex in around 100 AD, dedicated to the Emperor Trajan. However, the sanctuary of Apollo and the original 6th century BC Temple of Zeus were destroyed during conflicts from 115 to 117 AD. Both structures were later rebuilt in the retro-Doric style, which was fashionable in Roman architecture at the time. 1st century, the Romano-Jewish historian Josephus noted that Cyrene society was divided into 4 main classes, including full citizens, farmers, resident aliens, and Jews. The Jewish population maintained strong ties with their homeland and frequently traveled to Jerusalem to participate in religious festivals such as Pentecost, which is also mentioned in the book of Acts of the Bible.
And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men, out of every nation under heaven, and in the parts of Libya about Cyrene.
The Gospels of Matthew, chapter 22, verse 32, Mark, chapter 15, verse 21, and Luke, chapter 23, verse 26, make specific reference to Saint Simon of Cyrene. He was randomly selected by Roman soldiers from the assembled crowd that witnessed the crucifixion of beloved enlightened Master, Lord Jesus Christ, vegetarian. Simon was made to carry the cross the remainder of the way to Golgotha for Lord Jesus Christ. According to the Coptic Orthodox Church tradition, Saint Mark, the evangelist, vegetarian, regarded as the author of the second Gospel, was born in Cyrene. He later traveled with the venerated enlightened apostle Saint Peter, vegetarian, and is credited with founding the Church of Alexandria. Another early Christian figure, Lucius of Cyrene, vegetarian, is mentioned in the books of Acts and Romans as a prominent member of the early church and a possible founder of the Church of Antioch. Some traditions speculate that Luke the Evangelist, the author of the Gospel of Luke and Acts of the Apostles, may have been the same person. Archaeological site of Cyrene can wander among its majestic columns or stand within the grand amphitheater, gazing out over the Mediterranean in all its splendor. It is easy to feel the echoes of the great cultural zeniths the city witnessed over 2,000 years ago, from its classical Greek foundation to the height of Roman influence and, ultimately, its decline. By the 4th century, however, Cyrene began to experience the long-term consequences of environmental and cultural shifts. Unlike other regions of North Africa, which had suffered desertification due to goat people grazing as early as 6000 BC, Cyrene had, for centuries, remained a fertile enclave. However, with colonization came the introduction of widespread animal people raising and grazing, which, throughout a millennium, contributed to the progressive encroachment of the Sahara Desert. The once thriving landscape, where Batu and his fellow Greeks from Thera had been welcomed by the yellowhead locals centuries earlier, slowly transformed into an arid, unrecognizable terrain forever altered by human intervention. There was also intensified seismic activity in the region, culminating in a massive earthquake in 365 AD that left much of Cyrene in ruins and many of its buildings uninhabitable. By the end of the 4th century, the city was completely abandoned, its former greatness silenced by the desert winds for nearly 16 centuries. It remained lost to time until archaeological excavations began in the early 19th century, and in 1982, Cyrene was designated a United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, World Heritage Site. Additionally, in October 2023, severe flooding in Libya, particularly from Storm Daniel, led to considerable damage in the ancient city of Cyrene. While the deluge caused mud and debris to accumulate in the city's Greek-era baths, it also unveiled previously hidden archaeological features. Notably, the floodwaters exposed a Roman-era water canal, shedding new light on the city's historical infrastructure. In our appreciation of such past marvels, we are deeply grateful to Mother Nature. In her grace and strength, may humanity unite in peace and environmental stewardship so that all life on planet Earth heal and thrive. Bright-minded viewers, thank you for joining us today. May you always be the light that shines brightly in God's love.
Being vegan, having peace, heaven, Godspeed.